Tara, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. It's interesting because the last episode that I recorded, I did another social media influencer who just totally turned her life over to the Savior, and she, used her platform for that. And I see that that's kind of how you've been doing things as well. And I think it is so cool. Like anytime somebody is willing to share their faith online, like especially when you have a big audience, it's really awesome. And so, like, I don't know, I just was super impressed by your story and I'm excited to hear all the details.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited. And what was interesting is I watched her episode last night and I had heard about her in my hair salon last week. And
Oh
someone
my
was like,
gosh.
"You need to follow her. She's amazing." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll look her up." And then I didn't. I didn't look her up yet. And I saw her on your Instagram and I was like, "That's her. Oh my
Oh
gosh,
my gosh.
okay." So
That's
it
so
was kind of
cool.
crazy.
I love that so much. Well, awesome. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay. So I was raised in the church. I feel like I got like a good foundation. My mom, like it was super important in our house to learn about the gospel. She did her best to teach us. And I almost learned kind of in that era of like fear, like where the gospel, it was kind of taught in a way, and not necessarily like it was just my mom or whatever, but just like circumstances where it was very like fear driven and it was almost kind of like scary. You were like, if I mess up, it just feels really scary. Like I just didn't understand the gospel. So with that base of just kind of like anxiety and fear, I felt like once I was married, so I was married at 18 and we got married in the temple. I didn't understand my covenants. I hadn't like had my own conversion. I feel like I just kind of did what I was supposed to do. And so once I had done those steps, got where I was supposed to be, it was kind of like, now what? Instead of learning and growing, I kind of just went into this gray area in the gospel for years. And I have three daughters, and I was trying my best to almost raise them with one foot in, one foot out, like not fully committed. I struggled with my garments from the very beginning. I feel like I didn't gain that testimony of them, and I just had a very, I guess, vain way of looking at them. I looked at them as restricting. I looked at them as I couldn't wear the cute clothes I wanted, just very vain. And I never had that personal testimony of them. And so, with all that in mind, I entered this space where I just felt really lost. And I had the gospel. It was right there, but I just wasn't choosing to fully partake of it. I feel like those core things that were taught to me, though, were always in my mind. Like I had them in my mind. I felt like the gospel was true, but did I prove that with the way I lived? Probably not. And so I started like creating LDS content just about like a year ago. And it was almost like this journey of proving, like, hey, there's room in the church for you. Are you like me? Can you relate to me? I'm still a member. I was like defending my place in the gospel of kind of one foot in, one foot out, essentially. And so I wasn't viewing it like that. I was trying to find my place in the gospel myself. And I wasn't realizing, like, through those videos, that's what would end up happening. And so, about 4 months ago, I had a conversation with my bishop. I approached him and I told him, I was like, I just feel really lost. I don't know my place. I feel like I'm kind of doubting. I feel just this space where I just felt super lost. I wrote down at the time when I read this, though, it didn't impact me the way that it would later. And so he said to me that you are a perfect daughter of Heavenly Father. He loves you more than you or I will ever comprehend in this life. Your brother, also perfect, with no mistakes or offenses, willingly gave his life for you. Tara is imprinted in his palms and in the stripes on his back, all because the love they have for you. We cannot remember them, but they know us personally. You are sent to this place at this time with talents and a perspective that nobody else in this world understands, because he is a job for you to do. And then he said, if I give you a challenge, will you do your best? And I had no idea what it would be. I was actually scared. Before he texted me back, I was like, oh, he probably has seen online things I posted and he probably wants me to put my garments back on. That was my guess. And he doesn't even have an Instagram. He didn't know. He had no idea I was posting these things. His challenge to me was for 2 weeks, he would want me to read a conference talk, read the scriptures daily, teach my girls about the gospel, and to pray. Just very basic. And it was things I was missing in my life. And so I told him I would do it. And so as this challenge started, I was still quite hard-hearted. I started it. I was like, I don't really feel anything. Like, what do I do? I'm just a hopeless cause. Like, I want these things, but they'll never happen for me. Like, that's kind of how I felt. And I had like a really bad attitude. I don't know if I had like a wall up or what, but I was just almost feeling super hopeless. And so he kept checking in on me, and almost to where I was like, okay, you gotta leave me alone. I was kind of like, Bishop, I get it, but it's not gonna work for me. That's how I was feeling, but I didn't tell him that. I was like, yeah, I'm trying to do it. I'm trying. I hope it turns out. I don't know. After the 2 weeks, I kept going with it, and it kind of became a habit. I also felt like I kept feeling the impression, put your garments on. And I was like, no, I will be such a hypocrite if I do that. I had literally posted things about it's okay if you don't wear them, you could still be in the gospel. So I was like, I can't do that. People will be like, what is this lady doing?
So you're posting these videos and you're saying, hey, it's okay to not wear your garment. You're kind of advocating for this 1 foot in, 1 foot out lifestyle.
Exactly.
What kind of response did you get from people when you're posting about this stuff? Like what was the response? Tell me a little bit about that.
So definitely good and bad. Some people like, oh yeah, I struggle with the same thing. I still believe I still want to be in church. So they relatable, but then also a lot of hate. And there was a lot of hate from like members. What the heck? Like, no, you can't just pick and choose. And then also like non-members. Get out of this church. You clearly don't believe it. You don't. And in a way, they kind of had a point. Like now that I look back, I'm like, well, you kind of had a point. Why would I think I could partake of the blessings of the gospel, but not put in the effort? But I'm really not sure why that made sense to me at the time, but it kind of did. It was just more like I wanted to be there. I wanted God in my life. I wanted these things. But it all kind of boiled down to like, I just didn't feel like worthy or accepting. Like, I didn't feel deserving of his blessings. And so I think it was like a self worth battle that I was almost putting this out there like, okay, now you know I have a wall up and you can't get to me. But it was more just like a battle of self worth, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm. So, what were the videos like? Was it like just you talking or what was tell us more about the videos that you were making?
So they were like short little clips. Some of them were just little phrases, more like little clips of music. And I would somehow relate it to my life and the gospel. If you look back, you can see I wanted my place in that gospel. You could see it. But I had no clue. I just needed to put the work. Like that's all I needed to do. It's hard for me to understand it now being on the other side. I'm like, hello, you had all the pieces. Why didn't you just do it? What the heck were you thinking? A part of too my repentance process too was a lot of guilt with that and a lot of like sorrow and I don't know and almost ashamed of who I was. And so that was
Mhm.
difficult too in this journey too, is facing all of that.
You know the show The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives?
Mm-hmm.
That was like a big thing recently on social media and like just in the LDS influencer world, I guess. They were talking about that a lot. The real lives of Mormon wives or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a kind of a unique perspective on it because as somebody that was myself, I was out of the church doing drugs and partying.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like having that desire to be in the church is that's the starting place. You know what I mean? Like having that, like just like you said, like yeah, you were kind of promoting like the 1 foot in, 1 foot out lifestyle, but I think the fact that you even wanted to have 1 foot in was a good place for you to start to have like even somewhat of a desire to like continue to grow. I think it probably like helped you recognize like, oh, something's missing here. Something's missing here in my life by not stepping in with both feet.
And I think that's where the point I was at when I contacted my bishop. I was kind of like, okay, I either belong or I don't. And I keep getting this feedback. And it was just very like eye opening. And it's funny now for me to like watch back of the videos because I can totally see my changes play out. And I had no clue making those would actually be like a personal transformation for myself. I didn't anticipate that. I thought I would be, here I am today, not wearing my garments, defending myself. I'm going to still go to church. Don't judge me. And that's essentially what I wanted from people, is I wanted them to just kind of like, leave me alone. Don't push it. This is who I'm going to be. But once I reached out to him, it was interesting the blessings that came with like turning my life to God. And like I said, I kept having that prompting to put them on. I had no idea that I didn't necessarily have the Spirit in my life. I thought I did. Jesus Christ had shown up for me in different places. I would pray, like I had a good base, like you said, but I didn't realize I was missing his Spirit. I was. And so when I put the garment back on, after it was a little bit of time after that 2 week thing with my bishop, I'm trying to think of the timeline. And after I did, I purely put them on to be obedient. And I had made a decision that, okay, I want to be obedient. Let's just see what happens. I mean, I haven't really done this before, so let's just see. And so I almost kind of was like, let's see what happens. So I put them on, and like within a couple of days, the Spirit flooded my life. It flooded it to where I didn't even like have room enough to receive it. I never experienced that myself, and I felt it, and it was something so special to me. I remember a feeling that like I just couldn't get enough of the gospel. Like I just wanted to keep reading. I wanted to read the scriptures. I desired the general conference talks, like all the things that before I didn't necessarily like study. I would sometimes read, or like if I needed peace. It was more I turned to it when I needed God, versus just trying to maintain that spirit. And so like what's changed for me now is now I wake up with the intention I want God in my life, whether it's a good day or a bad day. And I think before I almost was choosing like, okay, God, you got to help me now. And I wanted him to help me, but at the same time, I wasn't doing the things to have his Spirit in my life. So I remember wearing them for a couple weeks, and it just felt really good. It was kind of interesting, my perspective. Instead of like, I can't wear this and I can't wear that, I wanted them on. I I had that burning desire to have his Spirit in my life, and I didn't want to do a thing to change that. And so I texted my bishop then, and I said, hey, I think I want to get to the temple. This has kind of been the big thing keeping me there. And when I say 1 foot in and 1 foot out, it's not like I had this giant list of these horrible things I was doing. It was kind of mainly that and some other things I needed to work on too, but it wasn't as unattainable as I thought. So I almost had created this boundary for me, like, you're not good enough. You'll never make it. You can't do these things. But in all reality, like, God was right there. Like, come here. All you have to do is take that step. And so I didn't realize that until I had like the Spirit come back to me, and it was like, yeah, you can get to the temple. You can go there. You belong too. After I texted my bishop, I didn't know how long that process would take. In my mind, I was like, okay, I got to work on this for like a year. I've got some big things I need to work on. I was thinking in my head, okay, I am so far away from where I need to go to. And so he had set up a meeting with me. And I think in my mind, I was thinking, okay, here's our start. And so before that meeting happened, what was interesting is even though I had the Spirit back in my life, I had a really, really testing time that weekend before church. And our meeting was on Sunday, but I had this period of time where like I had such a feeling of inadequacy, all of those feelings again. Flashbacks of like who I was or things I posted, shame, embarrassment, guilt. It was so overpowering, I almost gave up. Like, I was like, yep, you're right. I'm not good enough. What am I doing? Like, just kind of that self-worth thing. And I almost feel like it was like kind of Satan's last try with me. Like, you're going to make this big step. Don't do it. And I was going to back out. I was like, yep, you're right. I'm not worthy of this. What the heck am I doing? I'll never change. And I kept having this fear of, what if I fall? What if I fail? Like, if I align my life and I fall again, what will happen to me? I had that fear. And that is so wrong. Like, I didn't understand the atonement, that I would be worthy of his atonement. And just as I believe it's other people can have that, I can have that for myself too. And it was just funny how I never clicked with my head that I could have the atonement in my life. Almost felt like I wasn't allowed it and it didn't apply to me. But then when I met with the bishop, it was actually a temple recommend interview. And I didn't know that was the interview. And so he started reading the questions, and it was very interesting. As he went through each one, I had like the Spirit confirmed to me my testimony of each principle he read to me. And I knew it. I knew it. And he also said to me that he knew what I was going through. He knew I had felt the guilt and all of these things, and to let it go. And he said I was forgiven and to move on. I have repented, and it's time now to be who I can be. And so it was almost like I needed someone else. So I didn't have to rely on my own intuition to tell me I was okay and that I made it through that process. And so once he said that, that burden was lifted. And it was so joyful. It was the most joyful experience of my entire life. I've never felt so overwhelmed with just happiness and just peace. And for a long time, I've struggled with like anxiety and just self doubt. And I didn't know it was possible for me to feel that peace. And that peace came through the gospel and through the atonement. So that was really special for me to experience that.
That is so incredible. So tell me about your husband during this time. Like, tell me about when you decided to take your garments off. Like, what was his reaction to that? And where was he during the time of your deciding to strengthen your testimony and come back?
So this is kind of funny, but I didn't tell him. And so he's been kind of on his own journey. He's super busy with work. There's been times he's been active, times he hasn't. And so it's almost like that area I didn't address. Like we just,
Mhm.
it's kind of the elephant in the air. Like we both don't really know where we belong. And so while I was taking my own journey, he started coming back to church, and he had like 7 weeks where he was coming. And I didn't want to overshadow that. I didn't want to be like, hey, I got this going on. Because in my heart, I was like, oh my gosh, you're coming back with me. This is awesome. We're kind of aligning at the same time. And so I didn't share it with him. And one silly thing, my youngest, she's 6, she said to me, I didn't even tell my family I was putting the garments on. I didn't want to make it this deal. And I also was scared, like, what if I can't do it? I don't want to let them down and let my daughters down. And my 6-year-old, she said to me, she's like, Mom, why are you wearing dad's jammies? And so this whole time she thought his garments were like his pajamas. So we had a lot of teaching.
That's so
She
cute.
thought he wore them every day to work under his clothes, I guess. And so I don't know. He'd always just kind of worn them and didn't really bother. He didn't really say much to me. He's just very like mellow and non-judgmental. And so I think he was just kind of like she'll work her own self out. He didn't really question me or anything. But after that interview with the bishop, we were and I got the recommend that still needed signed by the stake, but we drove home from church together, and I felt like it was time to tell him, like, oh, this last 6 weeks, I've completely changed my attitude on everything, and I didn't know how he'd receive it. And I was really scared. And so we told our kids to go into the house, and I started sharing with him what I had been going through. And he was so kind and just so receiving of it. And he's like, I knew you could do it. Like he was just so believing in me. And so I almost feel bad I didn't share it with him and go through it together, but I didn't want to let him down either. So
Mhm. How big of a part do you think social media played in your taking off your garments and like wanting to be one foot out? Or do you think it was more like what was the tipping point for you and being like, yeah, I don't really need these anymore?
it's hard to tell because I definitely struggled with them from the very beginning. And so it was almost like 80-20. You're wearing them 80%, 20%, I'm going to wear an outfit I want. It wasn't like a moment where I was like, I'm done with these, I'm taking them off. It
Mhm.
was more never had a steady testimony of them or wore them the way I should. And I remember getting to a point, I'm trying to think of when that was in my life. I don't know, but I felt like I was only kind of putting them on to go to church. Like now
Mhm.
I got to this point where it was flipped and it was like 90-10. And I'm like, wait, I'm putting these on only to go on Sunday? I was like, oh, I better not wear these at all. Like I'm really being disrespectful. So I think it was almost a decision like, well, you can't do this. Don't wear them. Don't mock God, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I don't really know if it was social media. It's just kind of a constant struggle for me.
Yeah. Yeah. What has your experience been like since I know you touched on this a little bit, but with your gaining a testimony of what the garment really means? Like, tell me a little bit more about that.
I feel like I felt the spirit come flooding back into my life. Still didn't really know what the promises were with them. Was very unfamiliar with them because I hadn't done
Mhm.
the initiatory in I don't know how long. But when I did go back to the temple, we're lucky we have a temple a couple blocks from my house. And I did the initiatory several times. The first time I went back through, I really retained those promises. And once they were like repeated back to me, I was like, oh my goodness, these actually do have power. I definitely felt it, but I didn't realize the promises that came with it. I can't believe it that I missed out for so long because I was vain, and worldly. And I think that's essentially what it was. And when I look at the self-worth part, I think I wanted to be in shape. I wanted to feel pretty. I wanted to wear trendy outfits. I wanted to feel beautiful through what I wore or
Mhm.
an outfit or whatever else. And so I
Mhm.
wasn't looking at what I was losing. And until I had that moment of putting them back on and feeling it, I didn't know what I was missing out on.
Mm. Yeah, it's so true. I feel like you do choose to follow the Savior and put aside like the vain things of the world when you're putting on your garments. And I think that it's like a sign that you want to follow the Savior in your life. I love that so much. So tell us more about what you're doing on social media these days.
It's been kind of crazy because since then, I started making more positive. I was like, okay, I better tell them all. By the way, I put these back on.
Yeah.
And so I was like trying to think of how to do that. And I was like, how on earth can I share this experience? Like, by the way, now I'm at the temple. And I was very private about it during that journey. I wanted it to be sincere and I didn't want it to be anyone else's business at that point.
Right.
And so all of a sudden it's like I'm not wearing them and then bam, I'm gonna start wearing them. But
Mhm.
I did make a few videos like, hey, I didn't believe in them until and kind of started telling my journey a little bit. And I was able to go to General Conference in person. This was a part of like my experience, and that was really a good experience for me. And the prompting that I had felt during that is to start a separate channel on my Instagram page that was like called My Journey to Faith. And it could be separate from the haters and all the people that say the terrible things to me or the unkind things. And I felt like I could control more who was invited to that little channel. And I was like, I don't even know if anybody will want to be a part of this. Say even 10 people are, I won't feel so silly and about sharing. And so I started that. I started that channel and started sharing a little bit of my conversion on there. And I felt like it gave me like a separation from something sacred to me that those who were invited to that or accepted that wanted to know that and weren't going to
Mhm.
bash and hurt me during that time where I was like, I'm fragile. I can't take
Yeah.
any more heat from anybody. I know this seems so hypocritical that I'm back in the gospel, but here I
Yeah.
am. And then also on social media, I got a message a couple weeks ago that actually scared me half to death. And it was from the church's official page. And before I even opened it, I was like, what do they want from me? Oh my goodness. Like, I wonder what this could be. And so I opened it up and they wanted to like invite me to something. And what I ended up getting to go to was the Light the World launch in
Awesome.
Salt Lake. So that was this last week and it was super special. I was really excited. I got to speak with an apostle, Gary Stevenson, and I kind of told him a little bit about my journey and my story, and he wanted to listen. And he asked me if I wanted to ask him a question. And I did, but I got really shy and kind of bottled up. And I was like, I don't want to say something I'll regret my whole life. So I don't know. I gave him the weirdest answer. And then he started kind of just talking to me and counseling me. And I had a question in the back of my mind, and it was just kind of, what do I do to move forward? And he completely answered that question
Wow.
without me asking. And he knew.
Wow.
He looked in my eyes. He knew what my heart wanted. He gave me that answer fully. It was funny too. I had someone from the church communications or whatever. They sent me a photo later. I did not like the photo of me. I felt like I look weird. It's a bad angle, but you can see it's literally my genuine reaction to he is telling me exactly what I needed to hear. And I was like,
Oh my
okay,
gosh.
well, I'm definitely going to post that, even though I got a triple chin and everything else. Put it out there. I gotta now have a come back to Jesus. So I definitely put it, I posted about it and it was just like my reaction to like, he literally answered my question without knowing my question. And that was pretty powerful to hear. So I think that was the purpose for me to go. I don't really think I have the hugest following that would like help the church with me being there. I feel like I'm just like little in the social media world, but I feel like it was a personal experience for me. So that was really awesome.
So cool. I love how you went from just being like, oh, I'm encouraging one foot in, one foot out, or it's okay. There is a place for everybody in the church. Like there is a
Yes.
place. But like you demonstrate that by jumping in with both feet and doing what the church, what God asks of us, it comes with spiritual growth and it comes with joy and peace in our lives. And I love that you kind of experienced that.
And I almost want to like share with people that yes, you still belong, but if you do follow the things we know to be true, there's so many more blessings accessible to
Mhm.
you. And do I feel like my life is any less hard than it was 4 months ago? No. But I have the Spirit with me. I still have those same trials. I still have those same things, but it's easier to work through those issues with the Spirit. And I
Right.
didn't know I was missing that. And so that's what I'm like. I really want to share that with people. Like,
Yeah.
yes, you do belong. And I love the thing where it's like, the church is more like a hospital for
Yeah.
people who are sick and who need it. And it's not a fancy car showroom. And
Right.
I love that because it's so true. And also, I needed to realize that I didn't have to be perfect
Right.
to qualify to go to the temple. I had to try and strive. That was a huge word in our temple recommend interview was, are you striving for this? Because in my head, it was like, well, no, I'm not perfect at that. Like there's been times I went to the store on Sunday or I wasn't prepared. Like just thinking of the Sabbath day holy, simple little things that I honestly had gotten out of the habit of even doing. But he said, are you striving? And
Yeah.
that gave me hope. That word, I just keep focused on that. Like, yes, I need daily repentance to work for that spirit, but I can do it with that. And I can't, no more trying to do it by myself
Yeah.
because it didn't work.
Yep. I love that so much. Is there anything else you'd like to leave listeners with? Like, as they're listening to your story, what like advice would you have for somebody that struggles with wearing their garments?
Just take that step. Like, whatever is stopping you from getting to the temple, give it up. Like, there's nothing in this world worth having that's more important than the temple. And the peace it brings to your life is just so worth it. And if I can feel that, you definitely can feel that. So, yeah, that's just how I feel. Like, if there's anything stopping you, work towards those goals. Meet with your bishop if you feel like you need that extra push, that assistance. That's why they are there. And even if you feel like it's just like small things, it's not a bother to your bishop. Your bishop wants to bring you home to your brother, Jesus Christ. And that's his goal and his job. And I think for a long time, I didn't feel like I was important enough, but you are.
I love that so much. So good. Well, Tara, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And you're so beautiful inside and out. And I just really appreciate you being willing to stand up for what you believe in and taking that step and doing what's right.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Yes. Thank you. A lot of people have asked us how they can support the podcast, and we have created a Comeback Podcast merch line on our website, www.comebackpodcast.org. All of the money made from the merch goes right back into the podcast. So if you are interested in supporting the podcast and you want to purchase some merch, we would love it. Check it out. Thank you so much for being a supporter of the Comeback Podcast and listening to our episodes. It would mean so much to us if you would like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps other people be able to find us, and we want to share this message to everyone.